Here we go. All right, we are live, and good evening, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime with the Bad Girl, the Playa, and Dangerous Dave. I am Benny Scala, aka the Playa. With me, as always, is my partner in True Crime, the Boston Bad Girl, the Siren of Scituate, New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Famer Brittany Brown. Brittany, how are you?
I am doing well, but I'm floating away in a flood right now.
Oh no.
Yes.
Google, not Google, YouTube the Australian crawl. Might come in handy, right?
Yeah, anything will help at this point. It's bad out there.
Oh boy.
How you doing?
Good. Well, now rounding out this all-star cast is wrestling legend Dangerous Dave Starr. Now, Dave, I've been told by very reliable sources that today is your birthday, so let's all wish Dave a happy birthday. And Dave, since you are a playa, like the playa, there may be a lot of blowing going on at the Dangerous Dave domain of birthday candles, of course.
Yeah, there was about an hour and a half ago. There was a lot of blowing. Yes.
All righty.
Yes, my daughter's and my granddaughter Gianna Marie. Hi. My daughter's got me a cake and made me a nice steak dinner, so I'm ready and raring to go.
Oh, that sounds well. Thanks for that's devotion. Joining us on your birthday, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Where else would I want to be without everybody out there in podcast land?
Absolutely. Well, guys, this is one hell of a case. Gentleman Chris Adams made his mark in the mid to late 1980s with the World Class Championship Wrestling, and he was fatally shot by his best friend, Brent Bure. I wonder how they got that name. Parnell, on October 7, 2001, at Parnell's home in, see if I say this right, Waxahachie, Texas. And now Adams had gotten married, and there's some question on this. I've seen 2, 3, and 4 times. I'm saying the second time. But it was 43 days earlier, and he was awaiting a manslaughter trial for the April 2000 death of his then-girlfriend, Linda Kapengst. I think it's pronounced that way. And now, ironically, Bure was the best man at Adams' wedding. So you really can't make this shit up, right? Talk about a hot mess. So, as usual, go around the table. What was your initial reaction when you heard that Chris Adams was dead?
Well, for me, I came from an area where we didn't get that league of wrestling. It wasn't an option on any of our channels. I think that's the opposite for you guys. But I always thought it was suicide until, believe it or not, until Dark Side of the Ring came out. I was so shocked when I saw what really happened. So back when it happened, I didn't know what really happened. Like you probably both did.
Right. I wasn't surprised. Chris Adams, and I'm going to give everybody out there in podcast land a warning. I don't hold back. I say it the way it is.
Please don't. Absolutely.
If it offends people, I'm sorry. Too bad. But I mean, he was just a piece of shit for a human being. The thing with Chris Adams is there's so many guys like myself, and Brittany knows tons, that would have given anything to be in the position that guy was in, making the money he was in. And what grates my ass is these guys just keep it. Everybody makes one mistake, but they just keep making mistakes after mistakes after mistakes, and they just don't appreciate what they have. Like, in order to appreciate what you have, you'd have to know what we go through to get in the ring with the training, Killer Kowalski or whoever trained you. And these people just don't appreciate the opportunity that they have. And that really grates my ass. That just burns my ass. Because I would have loved to be in that position he was in. I would have been so grateful for that, to make the money and the TV exposure and the help. Because I personally, I don't think he was that great of a wrestler. That's just my opinion. In my opinion only, I think he got a good push. I know there was a lot of whining from him behind the scenes that he wasn't getting pushed. So Fritz Von Erich finally gave him a push. But to be honest with you, he never impressed me as a wrestler. That's just me. That's just my opinion.
But you're right, Dave. Though I mean, he had to be making like when in the heyday of world class wrestling, wrestling with the Von Erichs. They wrestled at the Dallas Stadium. I mean, they had 30, 40,000 people at those shows. He had to be getting paid big time.
Texas Stadium, yeah, where the Dallas Cowboys play. They're having shows at Texas Stadium
Well,
and
maybe it was the Cotton Bowl. I think I want to wherever.
Cotton Bowl. They had a
Terry
big
Flair for the title, but
right.
I mean, they were. I mean, first of all, the Von Erichs were rock stars, and wherever they went, and I mean, Adams and Gino Hernandez, ironically, both really super tragic figures, where they were their main foil along with the Freebirds. But you're right. I mean, the guy had the world by the cojones. He was probably like 30, 31 years old. He had to be making like high six figures, a couple of $100,000 a year, and you're right, just like blew it all, and then some.
Not only blew it all, but look what he did along the way, beating women up. His girlfriend, I believe, OD'd, right in his best friend's house. I believe
we're going to get to all that. I mean, it's one crime scene after another, and like.
But maybe he fit that mold for world class, where they didn't want people. Fritz von Erich didn't want people overshadowing his sons, so maybe he fit that mold where he was, below. Because I don't think he was a great worker. Maybe he fit that mold where he was just about enough that he could work and talk, but not overshadow the Von Erich boys.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
that's an interesting thought. I think you might be right about that.
No, I agree with you. And when you think about it, though, and all the tragedies didn't happen while they were in world class, but you think about it, like all the Von Erich boys, that they all met one tragic death or another. Then you got Adams, then you got Gino Hernandez, then you got Bruiser Brody. Like I said, not all happening there, but I mean, like those guys are all cursed.
And don't forget about Terry. Don't forget about Terry Gordy too.
Yeah.
Right.
He died very young. Even Rick Rude, who was a mainstay there. What did he die at 40?
Yep.
I think, yeah. I mean, it's just like a lot of bad juju in that territory. But now I wanted somehow to work in the bizarre Ultimate Warrior promo that he cut. I think it was during WrestleMania 7, I think it was, or 5. About Hulk Hogan assuming the controls. Remember that one, that bizarre promo? But I drew a blank. Now, I never could understand why the two pilots were already dead, and because the plane hadn't crashed yet. The only thing I could think of was maybe they had like chicken cordon bleu for the dinner that night, maybe, and just didn't agree with them. But anyway, I'm going to turn the controls over to the bad girl by conventional methods, and there might be a bit of turbulence, but I have the utmost confidence that she will land the True Crime jet safely.
Yes, we'll hope for the best. All right.
Yeah.
So
Chris Adams.
Chris Adams initially made his mark in the world of judo, and I didn't know this before this story.
Yes, indeed.
Where he won numerous championships. His younger brother Neil won 2 silver medals in Olympic judo. Adams decided that he could achieve fame and fortune in professional wrestling, which he certainly did. He came to the United States in 1981 and initially wrestled for NWA Hollywood, where he won the NWA Americas title. He also wrestled in the Pacific Northwest, Japan, Europe, and Canada before he signed on with the up-and-coming World Class Championship Wrestling promotion in 1983. Although a very popular babyface, he was smart enough to know that he would not overtake the Von Erichs. Just like you said, Dave,
right,
for the top baby face spot. He worked with legendary manager Gary Hart to effect his heel turn, which was a good move.
Absolutely.
Here's where Adams' personal jet starts a tailspin. Chris assaulted a pilot and a male steward on a flight from Puerto Rico on June 30th, 1986. The plane had been on a delay for mechanical issues, and all on board were provided complimentary alcohol. They didn't know what they were doing. Adams was told by a flight attendant that he was cut off, resulting in an intervention from the co-pilot. Adams then headbutted the co-pilot, fracturing his nose. This resulted in a 90-day jail term. Now, isn't that interesting for back then compared to what it might be now?
Didn't the WWE, wasn't that the whole start of the Ric Flair helicopter thing where they had free alcohol on the plane? I guess not a good move.
Yep, not a good move. So Adams was arrested in February 1988 after his second wife, Toni, was found beaten at their home in Lufkin, Texas. He received a 1-year probation.
Wow.
He faced additional legal issues in 1991 due to a pair of DUI arrests. At some point during his run with WCCW, he got hooked on GHB, also known as human growth hormone. This, coupled with his abuse of alcohol, plummeted the Gentleman Express towards a not-so-friendly landing spot.
Nice. Adams
moved over to the UWF, formerly Mid-South, in late 1986. He initially experienced success in a tag team with Terry Taylor, who later became the Red Rooster. Apparently, he rubbed the cock the wrong way as they began a violent feud a few months later.
I'm sorry, I had to do
that. Thank you, Benny. Adams returned to World Class in late 1988 and opened a professional wrestling school. One of his first students was Steve Williams, later to become Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin was quoted as calling Adams a con man and a pile of crap due to Adams allegedly stiffing his trainees and ill preparing them. Adams also wrestled with the Global Wrestling Federation and World Championship Wrestling before ending his career in 1999. Chris fell madly in love with a young lady named Linda, and I don't know how to say Kapengst, in early 2000. In April of 2000, Adams and Linda went to friend Brent Boo Ray Parnell's Dallas apartment at 2 a.m. to drink and play pool. They had previously been out to dinner and consumed copious amounts of alcohol. Boo Ray was unable to revive either of them the next morning and called wrestling promoter Tom Lance. Lance heard Linda's strained breathing and encouraged Parnell to call 911. Good move. Paramedics were able to get her to breathe, but at that point she was brain dead. Chris left a threatening message for Pam Hernandez, a friend of Linda's, saying that if she didn't keep her nose out of his business, she would wind up just like Linda. Lacey Cole, a friend of hers, turned the recording over to the Collin County District Attorney, which was presented to a grand jury, resulting in Adams' indictment for manslaughter. According to Boo Ray Parnell, Chris wanted to hire a hitman to kill Lacey Cole for turning the tape in. Chris meets Karen in November 2000. She falls in love with him and they are married on August 25th, 2001. On October 7th, 2001, Chris visited the home of Parnell to plan a wrestling show. Adams reportedly attacked Parnell in a drunken rage, and according to this Boo Ray character, attempted to choke him out. Boo Ray reached for a gun on his night table, and after attempting to hit Adams with it, subsequently fired, fatally injuring him. Parnell was questioned by the police, but was not charged for the incident.
So Dave, did Brittany say anything to change your mind about the guy?
What a piece of shit. I mean, how many, when she reads this and it says, Chris Adams met this girl and they fell madly in love. And you know what? Beating women, giving women drugs, and cheating on him is not madly in love. That's a piece of shit. But, he got all the breaks along the way. He got, and that's the thing. The promoters pushed him, and he just didn't appreciate it. And he just, what a way to die, though, huh? The guy, I don't know anything about too much about the guy that shot and killed him, but I do know this: the guy,
Texas good old boy.
He tried to help him. I believe the guy. I believe the guy had his own house, and he let Chris Adams stay there many a times when he was
he let
down
him
on
money many times. I don't think he ever got paid back.
Oh.
No, and that's the thing she gets, being choked out. He helped him many a times while he was down and out on drugs, not working, until he got back on his feet. Then he'd go back to the guy's house, and that's the thing that you get. And I believe that he shot him anyways. I don't believe he reached for the gun and tried to hit him and the gun went off. I don't believe that at all. I believe he just shot him. That's like the type of, hey, you know what? You're a woman walking down the street. It's great actually, because it's like a woman walking down the street and someone says, hey, I'm gonna mug that woman and steal her pocketbook. But unfortunately the woman had a gun and shot your ass and weren't able to steal her pocketbook. And this is the same thing. If he thought he was going to choke him out, and unfortunately, he had a gun on his on the bed next to him, and that's it.
Let me ask you guys a question, really, just from the wrestling realm. Do you think if had he stayed away from the drugs and the alcohol and everything, and kept his head out of his ass, do you think because he peaked in the the late '80s, maybe could he have gone to WWF at the time and had the same type of career as William Regal, or do you think Regal was a better performer?
I think Regal was a better performer. I think on the stick he was better, and in the ring he was better. I don't think Chris Adams was a bad worker, but I would say pretty much, I have to agree with you, Dave. The way you said it was like he was just a little bit above average. I don't think he had this huge star power. Could he have been picked up by WWF? Maybe. Did he know someone that could have got him in? Probably. Do I think he would have lasted there? I don't think so. What do you guys think?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I put him, well, the big, Vince has the big machine that would have gave him the push, I think he would have, because of the push, he would have lasted a little bit on top and made some money, but I don't think he had the longevity to last on top. As McMahon would have got the marketing machine going, he would have pushed him, and obviously he probably would have pushed his British, the British stuff, or gave him the gimmick or whatever. But I don't think he had, and I agree with you, Brittany. I don't, like down at World Class, Von Erichs were the draw. Like, in other words, if he was the champion, he wouldn't have drawn. I don't think he could have drawn. I think the draw was whoever he was wrestling was the draw. He was just like Brittany said, just a little bit above average.
Now, I will say though that the first time I ever saw a super kick was by him, and I thought, man, that's a great move, and I guess that comes from his judo background. I agree with you guys. I don't think he was definitely not the worst worker. He was a good worker, and I think he was decent on the mic. I have to say that, in my opinion, Regal was a tough guy too. He was a shooter. And
Regal, he was a great worker. Great worker.
Right. You don't want to mess with him for real. And plus, I thought his persona on the mic, the arrogant Englishman, I think he carried it off far better than Adams ever did.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Plus, he was more than just a wrestler, William Regal. He worked, and Brittany probably could tell you more, but he worked behind the scenes too. I know he was an agent.
Oh yeah.
He was big behind the scenes too, not just as a wrestler. But I'll tell you someone who I really thought would have, because we're on the subject, I think would have really made it big would have been Gino Hernandez. It's too bad.
you read my mind, my friend, because I thought like of course, Kerry came to the WWF, but he had his own demons. Plus, he lost the foot. But I think if Gino could have been a really big star in the WWF.
I agree.
Yeah, I think he would have.
He had that it factor.
Yeah, he had that. I think with the marketing machine and the Vince push. Plus, my own personal opinion is I think he was a hell of a better worker than Chris Adams. That's just my. In other words, I think he could have went. I think he could have went to the WWF, Gino Hernandez, and been an Intercontinental Champion. Like he really could. He could have been a draw. You know what I mean? In Intercontinental Champion, I think he would have made a great Intercontinental Champion.
I think he would have fit in with the Mr. Perfects and the Tito Santanas. I think he would have blended right in. They would have accentuated the Latin heartthrob thing, and I think it would have worked. I mean, the guy could have. I mean, he could definitely carry it up. Him and Magnum TA are my biggest. When you do the what if, those are my top two.
He's good.
Definitely.
Both of those guys would have been mega stars, I think.
I mean, it would have been big draws at WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think Magnum TA was already a huge star, like right when it happened. Right?
Yeah, I mean, he was he was the number one babyface, wasn't he? I mean, it was him and Flair. He was the U.S. champ. Flair was the world champ. And, I mean, it was very believable that at some point they were going to – I think if he had not been in that accident, I mean, he and Flair would have swapped that title many, many times.
Yep.
Yeah, he would have been a huge star.
And imagine if he ever went to WWF, he would have been in WrestleManias for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they would have eventually got him. But, in researching this show, I watched on YouTube a number of shoot interviews by other wrestlers, giving their opinion of Adams. And I was hard pressed to find anybody who had a good word about him. Dutch Mantel said he wrestled him once, and Adams kicked him in the stomach really hard. Shane Douglas told a story about, I guess, when they were in the I think it was the UWF, and Ron Simmons was in the front seat, and Adams was behind him, and I guess Adams had been drinking, and he started slamming the back of Simmons' seat. Simmons, I guess I never met Ron Simmons. I've heard he's a really, really nice guy, but don't ever mess with him. And after a while, Simmons got ticked off and said, "Chris, please don't do that anymore." Did it again. He goes, "You do that one more time, we're stopping this car. We're both going to get out, and there's going to be a problem here." And it did happen again. And Adams wouldn't fight him. Good, smart move, because he would have got killed. But they literally left him and his bags on the side of the road. Shane Douglas said he never saw him again after that. Yeah, he didn't make the town that night. John Tatum, who worked with him a lot, said he was a jerk, very difficult to work with. Like I said, I was hard pressed to find anybody who said anything good about the guy. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, what happens a lot too is you got to stop and think. We all travel together. All the boys and the girls, we all talk to one another. We all, in fact, me and Brittany were talking yesterday about a lot of the ex women wrestlers and some of the boys. We all talk going back when we wrestled too. When we travel, we talk. Word spreads. That's what I'm trying to say. Your reputation spreads. If someone's is an asshole in the ring, you know what? And then the next day you're in the car and say I'm traveling with Brittany or whoever, the Pink Assassin, or I'm traveling with Cowboy Chris Duffy. People, we all talk. We all talk, and and so word gets around, reputation gets around. Like the Killer said, he taught me one day. I might have said it on this program before, and it goes back to what he taught me. He used to say, no matter when I was getting ready to wrestle, no matter what promoter you work for, and what territory you go to, make sure you treat everybody with respect, because one day you might be meeting them very same people on the way down.
Right.
Well,
I mean, and Brittany made, one of the things she said was that, Stone Cold had legit heat with the guy because he said he ripped him off. And I mean, was it Buzz Sawyer that was famous for doing that? taking people's money and then to train them and then not training them. I think he did that with Magnum TA. He took like $5,000 off of Magnum TA. But Adams
imagine
apparently,
that.
yeah, I mean, and I would have to think that word would get around with that very fast as well, right?
Well,
Yeah.
not mentioning any names, but me and Brittany. Brittany was kind enough to take me out to dinner yesterday for the Rio Brazilian Steakhouse in Plymouth. I'll give a little plug there. Great food if anybody wants to go there. And we were actually talking about someone who I'll remain nameless, who did the same thing in the indie circuit, would steal from people. And we were talking about the same thing. So word gets around,
Yeah. Yeah. And think about it. 30, 40 years later, we're still talking just about an independent person that did that. So, of course, when, a big name does that, it's going to come up for years and years and years, long after that person is dead.
And this person,
sadly.
And the thing is, the Pink Assassin wrestled for this person who will remain nameless. And at the end of the night, the person got him in the shower and said, "We're not paying you." And this is a point I'm going to make, and told, "We're not paying you." And they never paid him. Well, lo and behold, the Pink Assassin came and told me what happened. I said, "That's unbelievable." I won't mention the Pink Assassin's real name, but I said, "That's unbelievable." And lo and behold, not maybe 2 weeks later, I'm in the dressing room on a show, and the Killer's there. A bunch of the guys are there. Referee Dick Kroll. I don't know if you remember him. He was he was reffing on the show, and this guy comes to me and says, "Hey, Star, you're a great worker. I want you to work on a show I got coming up." And I said, "That's fantastic." And he's going on about a little spiel. He's telling me. And I said, "Well, listen, I want the money up front." And he was startled. He goes, "What did you just say to me?" I said, "I want the money up front because I don't know you." And I gave him a bullshit story because I didn't want a confrontation. I said, "I never worked for you before, and I don't know what you're like, so I'd like the money up front before I go." And he said, "Who the F do you think you are? Some big star?" And then I said, "You know what? I'm going to tell you why I said that." And I went into the story about the Pink Assassin. And then, to make a long story short, Dick Kroll, Walter, Ricky Sexton, some of the boys had to get in between us because we almost got into a big fight in the dressing room. We were just about ready to go. But that's how word gets around.
Wow. Yeah, I would think like there is, to me, like there's the wrestling, the inner wrestling network that, just it's, telephone, telegraph, tele-wrestler. Once you get known for things like that, it's going to catch up to you pretty quick. I watched the documentary I watched. I didn't see the Dark Side. I saw what's it called? Gentleman's Choice was the documentary I saw.
Ooh.
And actually very good. You can find it on YouTube. But Kevin Von Erich told a story that I guess I think Adams was the road agent for WCCW, and they were in a town, and I guess for whatever reason, Kevin got up like 2 a.m. and he wanted to take a walk outside. He sees Adams in the lobby, all dressed to the nines, suit, hat, coat and everything. And he pats him on the back, and Adams like just turned around and says, "Kevin, this isn't what you think it is." And Kevin didn't really say what he thought it was, but he had a briefcase, and the briefcase was all the money. And Kevin said, "Look, if you're going to skip town, you better at least pay me and my brother." And so that's what happened. He got his money and his brother's money, and I guess Adams skipped town after that. Not a good guy. I mean, not good to speak ill of the dead, but I mean, you can't really speak well of the dead if they weren't good people.
No, I know. And like, we've been saying for the last few minutes back and forth about how the reputation keeps coming up. Years and years and decades later, people are going to be talking about stuff like that, and a good point that you said, Dave, about what Kowalski taught all of us too is, be careful who you disrespect because you're going to see those same people on the way down as you do when you're in the middle or on your way up. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree because here we are still talking about Buzz Sawyer, talking about the, person we were talking about last night from the Indies. And we'll tell you that, Betty, off air, of course.
All right.
And yeah. And, I mean, it's just unbelievable. But for somebody to take $5,000 and do that to Magnum TA, did they think that was going to keep quiet?
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, like I said, good, Dave.
I even heard some stories about Kurt Hennig when he got, when he was really into the drugs, and he was near the end, but he was wrestling indies, and I heard some stories about him. Of course, he would get his guarantee and playing fair up front from the indie promoters. And some of the shows he never even showed up. He just kept the money and never even showed up, and that's the drugs.
Yeah.
You have to, I guess maybe it is the drugs, because obviously you're not thinking, because, you might get one over on somebody that one time, but it's going to bite you in the ass, 100 times over. So, if you think about the future, it's not a good move.
No, it's not a good move.
That's one thing about Walter. That's one thing about Walter. Walter was very, very, he was a great guy. He looked out for his students, he wouldn't rip you off. He was trustworthy. Walter was, that's why a lot of people worked for Walter, like, Sabisco at the end of their careers, and Nikolai Volkov, and Bruiser Brody, and Abdul the Butcher, because they knew they were going to get paid. They didn't have to worry about being ripped off.
But it sounds like he did a lot more than teach wrestling. He taught like a lifestyle and a way of life, and proper code of conduct, and how to deal with people in the business. And I think that's just as important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
I mean, he was rough around the edges. He was, he was rough around the edges. But as far as some of the, I mean, in some territories, he didn't even want his students to go because he knew that they were going to get ripped off and abused. He knew that from being, and he'd tell you, listen, I don't want you to go there. Please don't go wrestle for this federation or this promoter. And some of the guys went against what he said, and they came back a few months later, and they were used and abused.
Yep. Found out the hard way.
Yeah. If we haven't talked about enough tragedy here, Adams had a daughter named Julia, and he fathered her it was a girlfriend, not a wife, and I think that's why maybe some people thought he had. People thought he married Jeannie Clark too, who Stone Cold eventually married, and I guess also when she was married to Billy Jack Haynes. Man, that's a trio to be married to, huh? But
oh my God.
Right, but now Freeman, Julia was born 1994. Cute little girl. I mean, she absolutely idolized Chris Adams as her dad. But she died. He died, of course, in 2001. She died of a drug overdose in 2003. You're 9 years old, and both your parents are dead. Like how horrible is that?
That's terrible. Now, was that his only child, right?
No, I believe Tony was his actual, I said earlier, second wife. She was actually his first wife. Jeannie Clark was his girlfriend. I think they might have had a child. He had one with Tony. I think she was a wrestler or a valet. And then he had the one with Brandy, who was not his wife. But he had, the only one he had any semblance of a relationship, as far as I know, was the little girl. And they had scenes of him. They were at a park, and she was playing in a sandbox, and Chris was sitting at the edge of the sandbox being interviewed, and he said, I've really changed a lot, and people think money is important and fame. He said it's better to be an icon to your family, and which is actually very true. The problem is with him, it was just words.
Right.
He was saying it. It sounded good when it came out of his mouth, but he certainly didn't live it.
Right. Right. And it's too
No.
bad he didn't take his own advice, you know? I mean, it's really too bad because he might still be here, but
Because I remember the first one he had the kid with, I believe, was born in Britain, and then they came over to the States. If
That
I'm,
might have been what's her name, Jeannie Clark.
and they
Lady
came
Clark,
over.
yeah, the one that married Stone Cold.
Then they came over to the States, and that's when he put her up in an apartment. And then he wouldn't. Then he went off, and he was just getting famous and making money. And then he wouldn't come home for weeks at a time. He left them in the apartment, and then he'd come home, and that went on for a while till she left him, I believe.
oh,
Yeah.
You know, it's really sad because the show, the Gentleman's Choice documentary I watched, they interviewed his parents, and they seemed like, and his brother as well, Neil, the one who actually, you know, kept his head on straight and became the Olympic silver medalist in judo. But the parents seemed like such good people. I'm sure he had a very good childhood. I think he just, you know, he got to the United States and, you know, got hooked on booze first. And then the GHB definitely did him in, though.
that's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that first incident was 1986. I think that was before he got hooked on the GHB. The plane episode where he just headbutted the guy. I mean, just lift him up, and Tim Brooks was telling this story. Or no, I think it was Kevin Von Erich. He said just headbutted the guy and like immediately broke his nose. Blood was shooting out everywhere. And this is the co-pilot of the plane. So he's lucky.
I'll tell you what. If I was a passenger on that plane, I would have freaked out. I would have hit him with some. I would have hit him with something because I would have freaked out. Like, what's he beating the pilot up for? What's the plane going to go down? What's he going to do next? If I was a passenger, I would have.
My first concerns like, who's flying this plane?
Right. That's right.
He's lucky he got the minimal jail time that he did. I think he could have got a lot, you know, assaulting a pilot on a, you know, I guess, I don't know, if Puerto Rico is not considered an international flight, but it's still, you know, it's a flight.
Yeah. Well, times have changed because if he was doing something like that now, I don't think he would have got the same sentence.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Pre 9/11 and post 9/11, very different.
I don't know what happened to that federation at World Class, but man, there are a lot of fucked up people down in that federation that
Well,
died.
that's what I'm saying. Like it's Dan. You know, Dan and I are thinking of doing a podcast about that. Like, you know, tomorrow's going to be who killed WCW, but there should be another one. Who killed WCCW?
Exactly.
I mean, you talk about people who imploded. I mean, they had a whole roster full of them.
A whole roster.
Bruiser Brody. Right. Bruiser Brody.
Yeah, Brody. You know, you said Terry Gordy, Rick Rude, Hernandez. I mean, like I said, not all the tragedies happened there, but all those guys died before. Like they didn't see 41. I think Terry Gordy was 40. I think Rude was 40, and they were the oldest.
I think the one that came out
isn't that something?
I think the one that came out of it the most was not Terry Gordy. What's his name? His partner there. He came out of it pretty good. He was. I think he's still. Michael Hayes. Michael P.S. Hayes.
He's still going strong.
I think he's got a job in the office. I think he's got a job in the office for Vince. He has been.
He's been gainfully employed in professional wrestling for like probably, I don't know, almost 50 years.
Yeah.
Vince loves that guy. He gave him put him in the Hall of Fame, I believe, and gave him a job behind the scenes. Probably, I think, on podcasts. I think he might have had his own podcast, and gave him a job working behind the scenes. Vince. Well,
he became a company man. You know, Kevin also told a story about they went. I guess for whatever reason, they did a tour of Israel, the Middle East, WCCW. And he got into it with a hotel clerk, meaning Adams, and because I guess the guy, or Adams wanted to make a phone call, and the guy told him you only have so many minutes, and Adams, of course, he must have been drinking, and he actually stomped on the guy's head, and the guy had to have, I think, like cranial reconstruction surgery.
What?
And and they literally had to smuggle him out of Israel, because I mean they don't mess around. I mean, you wouldn't wait like 6 months to go on trial there. I think his trial and execution would have been like within a day.
Right.
They literally had to smuggle him out of there supposedly because, yeah. So I mean, the guy left a trail, literally a trail of broken bodies, dead bodies. I mean, the one girlfriend, Linda, died. The Brandy, she died 2 years after him, but it just not good.
No, not good at all. And think about the friend, like we were talking about a little earlier, that friend of his that opened his home to him and his girlfriend, a wife, or whoever it was, one particular month. But I mean, to open your home to someone
and his mother was living there too. Bourré's mom and Bourré's aunt were both living in the same home. And by the way, before I forget, I did actually invite him to be on this show, but I never heard back from him. Bourré.
Bummer.
Wouldn't that have been great?
That would have been good. That would have been an explosive situation.
Yeah, I would have just we could all got some popcorn and sat back and listened to the whole story. It would have been what do they like? They have that expression with wrestlers, like it's like having a night off. That would have been a night off.
Right.
Yeah, I would have loved to have heard from him, especially so many years later, But I mean, I kind of think, I don't know, what do you think, Benny? I kind of agree with what Dave was saying about, do you think Bourré really went to hit him in the head with the gun, or do you think he tried to shoot him? Do you think it went off by mistake? I don't.
Oh, by mistake? No, I mean it was I guess what Bourré was saying is like Chris had him, he was choking him out. He had his hands around his throat, and Bourré was trying to fight him off. He grabbed the gun and he started hitting him in the head with it. But I guess, being he was about on the verge of passing out, he didn't have enough strength to really hit him with any force. So he thought and again, this is what he's saying. He's saying, it's either him or me at this point, and he shot him in the chest. But who knows what could have? I mean, it could have not went down that way.
Yeah. I didn't even realize. I thought that the way that I saw it in the show was that he didn't mean to shoot him. He just meant to hit him with the gun.
No, I mean he intentionally shot him, and I mean they did bring him in, but he was cleared it was self-defense.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't. He wasn't. He was an alcoholic too. He drank and partied and did drugs too.
They showed the drugs. It was like Walgreens at their house. I mean, there were so many bottles of prescription medication. I mean, who knows if it was even prescription medication? There's a lot of drugs there, and a lot of alcohol. Yeah, he was no saint, but I mean, everybody reacts differently when they drink, and I mean, true. I just laugh a lot, and it's, but you're either. I always say you're either a happy, a horny, or a violent drunk. I'm a happy one. Yeah, good violent. Adams was definitely a violent one. But who knows? I mean, they showed it was a violent struggle though, because they, I guess Adams pushed him against some of the windows, and you see like the windows were all cracked and everything. It was quite a tussle. And I mean, Bourré was a big boy, but I guess Adams is a professional wrestler, trained judoka. There's no match for him.
Yeah, no kidding. And, I wonder if his mother and aunt happened to be there when this all happened, like in a different part of the house.
Imagine they were. They supposedly, I guess until the gun went off, they didn't really hear. I guess maybe they beat the shit out of each other quietly. I don't know. Like they said that they said that they didn't really hear anything, but who knows? And I guess, I'm thinking the police probably said good riddance when they found out Adams was gone. It's like one less headache we have, right?
I mean, how many times you got to go to the well? How many times you got to go to the well? I mean, I blame the guy, that helped him. I mean, when do you learn your lesson? Do you learn your lesson when the girl died in your house and OD'd and you had to take her out. Like, and when do
Guess
you learn
not.
your lesson?
Well, I mean, and that's another good point, though. Like, I don't know that this would have had a happy ending anyway, because, keep in mind that he was indicted for manslaughter. He was going to have to appear in court to face manslaughter charges on Linda Compangs. And I mean, he could have been going away for a long time anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, unless he had the Jimmy Snooker luck, who knows?
I think he was too young to. He was only 45, I think, when he passed away. So couldn't pull a dementia card. Although he probably was half brain dead from all the drugs and everything.
Such a shame.
I'd like to know what some of these guys were making back then. I mean, of course, we're going back to the 80s now. Like what? Of course, you're talking about Fritz von Erich. Who knows what? If he was like any of the old timers, he probably didn't pay very well, only to his kids, probably. Or Brody.
Yeah, I have not heard that he was cheap, but I think like Paul Bosch in Houston paid a lot more than he did, than Fritz von Erich did.
There's a great promoter. Great promoter there.
Don Owen was a very generous promoter, I heard, and Sam Muchnick in St. Louis was also very generous. I mean, Fritz had to be making a shit ton of money though, because like I said, with his sons. And I mean, we could do a show on his sons too. I mean, what a cluster they were. But I mean, they were packing them in everywhere they went. Yeah,
that's funny you bring up Don Owens, because when I was training with Walter, after my training, I talked to him numerous times on the phone, Don Owens, and I sent my pictures up to the Pacific Northwest for him. And I remember he's just like one of the old timers. He goes, "Dave, listen, I only have 12 guys. I only employ 12 guys, and we do different towns. So I don't know. I'll try to get you up here. I'll try to get you into the Federation, but I only employ 12 guys at a time, and we just do our thing from, it's not a big territory, and it's that just reminded me when I talked to him a few times. But he did get my pictures. But he never used me.
Isn't that something? That's how it worked back then. I mean, now like you could contact anybody instantaneously, but you literally had to mail somebody pictures and a cassette tape or a video tape or whatever. But another guy who was in WCCW who was messed up for a long time was Ultimate Warrior, Jim Hellwig.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Another one.
Another one. I know.
He was another one that great box office draw, great charisma, but couldn't wrestle worth shit. Like he didn't.
No, he was a lot of sizzle and no steak.
Yeah, he couldn't. It was just he had the long hair and the muscles. He's on the steroids, which I guess did him in the end. I guess because he died the next day after he was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
there was a lot of. I mean, I watched his shoot promo on Hulk Hogan. It was about 50 minutes, and he really seemed to have turned his life around in the last couple of years of his life. But man, oh man, I heard horror stories. I guess there was an incident where he was supposed to. There was a kid who was dying, and literally, I think he died two days after the show, but. They asked him to go out and say something to the kid, and at the arena, and he blew the kid off. I mean, how horrible is that?
Awful. And I heard one of the other guys went and gave the kid like a T-shirt and autograph.
I think Bret Hart did. Yeah.
Isn't that?
I mean, how awful is that? And I mean, like I said, I believe he turned his life around, but he was a piece of crap for a long, long time, and he didn't make too many friends in the business either.
Well, you know what? The one thing you can't turn around, you can't turn around your liver. You can't turn around, when you're doing the steroids. You can't turn around your organs in your body. Those don't turn around. Once those stay damaged. Those stay with the steroids. So you can turn your life around, but you can't turn your organs around. And I think he had didn't he die of a heart attack?
Yeah, Yeah.
And how old?
I think he was 54.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
older, yeah.
And I know it was.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, eventually, it's like when you eat at a restaurant. I mean, even if you take your time, the bill always shows up, and you can't do that to your body. Like my theory, I mean, you can't do that to your body for years and get a free pass. You're going to pay in some way, and he did.
Right.
Some way.
Superstar Billy Graham did it. God rest his soul, and he made it. How old was he when he passed away? In the 70s, right?
Billy was, I think, almost 80 if he wasn't 80.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, he abused it, and he lasted. So it affected. I mean, although he had operations along the way, but it affects you differently.
I mean, some of the guys, like I think Jimmy Valiant is 82, and he took steroids back in the like we're talking in the 70s. I don't think anybody would accuse like the 1980s Boogie Woogie Man of taking any steroids, or even going to the gym for that matter. But yeah, he's 82. Ken Patera, I think, is 81. I'm trying to think who else. Bugsy McGraw. He's we had him on a Dan and Benny, and I mean he's still hanging in there. I think he's pushing 80.
Wow.
I got a picture signed by Bugsy McGraw when I saw him in a restaurant in Boston back in the 70s.
Really nice man. Very nice man. Became a registered nurse after he left wrestling. And actually, one of his patients right before he died was Jack Briscoe at Tampa General Hospital. Yes. Yeah, he was.
You got the trivia going on, Benny.
What's that?
You got the trivia going on.
Well, yeah, he was on our show twice, and I read his book before the show. But very, very nice man. He lives in Daytona now, and I text him once in a while, and he always ends it with "Be close to God, and He'll be close to you," which very nice. Good guy.
Very nice.
Good guy. But yeah. I mean, it's a shame. Like Chris Adams could have been so much, and all he had to do is stay away from drugs, stay away from not be a serial womanizer. I think that's one of the things that I don't know if that was caused by the drugs or that was just his personality.
I know. It makes you wonder.
I'll tell you what, I was memorized. You brought up Jimmy Valiant. Boy, I'll tell you what, I was memorized back in the 70s with him and Johnny Valiant when they were the Valiants. I was like I couldn't hate them. They had the blonde hair, and they came out with, the sequin jackets, and they juiced a lot. They juiced a lot, and they had sayings on their tights, flower power.
They were the first ones that had like any writing on their jackets or anything. I think they were the very first ones. I told Jimmy Valiant this story because he was one of my favorites as a babyface. He was teamed up with Jay Strongbow, and of course, everybody turned on Jay Strongbow, right? And it was 1971, I think, and I think they were wrestling Luke Graham and Tarzan Tyler, and of course, Jimmy turned on Jay on TV, and I'm 15 years old, and it was very, very real to me at that moment, and I just jumped up and said, "Son of a bitch!" And for the one time my mom was not in the kitchen cooking. So I saved myself a bar of Ivory soap. I dodged the bullet that one time, but I told Jimmy when the first time I met him, I said, I hated you. I mean, because they were that believable.
Yeah.
Right. They were. Yeah. I'll tell you, when I met Walter, before I joined his school, I had a meeting with Walter. And it was right off of 128 at a restaurant. I can't remember the rest. I don't know if there was a Howard Johnson's, but I met him just before I paid him. And I told him, we're talking. It wasn't the first time I talked to him, but it was the first time I actually met him. And we I'm laughing because the guy just sat there for 3 hours eating a friggin' salad. And, I was supposed to go there to pay him, talk to us about his school, sign up for his school, and I ended up sitting there for 3 hours while he ate salad. But, he was a great guy. And before I joined his school, he used to always say, no steroids. No steroids, no this, those are the rules. No steroids, no this and no that. But that just, I brought back that memory when I sat with him. Imagine sitting with him for 3 hours. And I told him that's the point I was trying to make. I told him, can I tell you something? I called him Mr. Kowalski because I didn't know him.
I would have too, yeah.
I said, "Can I tell you something, Mr. Kowalski? I hated you. I can still see it in my head." I told him, I hated you back in the 70s. I couldn't stand you. I hated your guts. You know what he said? Nothing. He kept eating his salad. I'm just laughing because I remember that meeting. And then I went up to the school. I believe it was that Sunday when I joined, and I gave him the check my mother wrote, and he's sitting on a chair. I said, "Here, Walter, here's the money for your school." And he says, "Oh," that voice he does, "Oh, I don't like checks. I like cash. I don't like checks." I said, "Oh, give me the check back. I'll tell my mother I'll go get you some money the next time I come up here." "Oh, no, that's okay. I'll take the check. I'll take the check." I still have that check. Brittany would say, "I still have that check with his signature on the back," because back then.
Oh, you had to endorse it, right? Yeah.
Right, but back then, when people cashed your checks, they sent the checks back to you in the mail. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Used to get the check. So my mother got the check cashed with his signature. I still have on the back of it.
Wow.
I showed everybody too when I went into the Hall of Fame for the IWF. I don't know if you can call that, Brittany. I held the check up with his signature on the back of it. That was from 1980 or 81. I still have it.
Not
thank
only.
God we're not talking about Kowalski on a true crime show.
No. But I tell you what, not only did I hate him, I was terrified of him.
Yeah.
He actually scared me. Him and George Steele actually scared
everybody.
Me. Yeah.
I saw George Steele. You know where the wrestlers come in and out of the dressing rooms at the Boston Garden there? You go down the steps right to the left, and there was the dressing rooms there. Remember they used to have them close them off with the doors? Well, I used to run down there, me and my friends, because we wanted to get a glimpse of the wrestlers. And I seen him after one match. George Steele literally, you know where the Bruins dressing room was? Bruins. He literally ran through that curtain all the way down. This is no lie. All the way down to that. This is back in the 70s. All the way down to where the Bruins dressing room was, and chasing the kids. And we were petrified. And the kids took off. Everybody took off. And he's out there in the car, in the corridor where the Bruins dressing room was. It was hilarious.
Good stuff.
So ironic, because what a very intelligent man in real life.
Yeah.
But you didn't know it then. And here he is going down, chasing all the kids down there. He must have been laughing his ass off.
So Killer didn't even say, "I was just doing my job." He just kept eating the salad.
Right.
When I met him, he just sat there, and I told him, "Walter, I hated you. I couldn't stand you." I said, "Mr. Kowalski," I said, "I couldn't stand you. I hated you." He'd look up, Brittany knows what I mean, and he'd just keep eating the salad. 3 hours. For 3 friggin' hours. I figured I was going to go down there, talk to him. I'd be out in 15, 20 minutes, be back home. I sat there like, Jesus, to myself, this has been 3 friggin' hours. I'm just taking this all in. You know what I mean? I was just right out of high school. I'm just taking this all in.
Impressionable. Like, wow. Kids, right? Wow. I love that. Well, guys, I think it's about time to put a lid on this one. And I don't know about you guys, but between Benoit, Snuka, and now this, I'm having a hard time figuring out which one was the most bizarre. What do you guys think?
I'd have to say, Jesus, that's a tough one. Benoit, because he murdered his family. Yeah. I'd have to say him. Fucked up.
I was going to say this one because of the way it happened and the friend, and he helped him and everything. But the most bizarre, I think, is Benoit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all bizarre.
They are.
Yeah.
Awful.
Just shitty human. And in the end, they're all just shitty human beings. They just, didn't stop and think. They're just, I don't know, I mean, you can blame the drugs, but you know, at one point you gotta blame the person.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Mike Monty on the phone the other day, and I said, yeah, Benoit, sure, he had the concussions, and sure, he took the steroids, but I just think, just looking at him, and again, this is just my opinion, he was off.
Yeah.
Just look at him; he just didn't look quite right. And I know Phil told a story about when he said that a restaurant was closed that Benoit wanted to go to, and he said Benoit gave him a look like if looks could kill. Phil would have been dead on the spot. But just I mean, I don't know if we have any other of these at the bottom of the barrel that we can talk about. But man, oh man, well, you don't have any tragedies like this in Major League Baseball.
My God. Well, I think Brody is definitely one, right? Bruiser Brody.
Yeah. I mean, that's more of a tragedy on his end, but I mean,
definitely.
Definitely. Ray Caruth comes to mind to me. You know who Ray Caruth is?
But the Carolina Panthers, right?
Yeah. What a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I said to somebody, who was it? That, and I don't know why, but like I can separate O.J. Simpson from his career. I mean, to me, he's just a murderer. And
right.
Benoit, to me, he's a murderer who was a wrestler. Jimmy Snuka, I really love that guy, but it's sad to think that what I loved really wasn't true.
No.
Well, you gotta call it. You gotta call it out as you see it. Just because people idolize these guys for where they are in the ring, look how they are outside the ring. You know what I mean? I mean, look at Bruno. Bruno never did none of this. Walter, they never did any of this stuff. Holly Race, Jack, the Funks, Dory Funk, Terry Funk. You never heard of all these people beating their wives up, doing drugs.
No, and all the guys you just mentioned, because any one of them you can YouTube, film, shoot interview about Harley Race. So you have like 10 wrestlers talking about Harley Race or Bruno or Terry Funk, and you're not going to hear one bad word about. And it would be the same for Bob Backlund. All you're gonna hear is good things about how professional they were and how like true they were to the business.
Right.
But a lot of it has to do with, I mean, they all led exemplary. Well, maybe Harley didn't. I mean, I heard Harley would drive 100 miles an hour in a Cadillac with beer cans. But I think that was his worst, his worst vice.
I heard Bob Backlund wasn't doing good. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've
heard that, from a number of people, and he's not. I mean, he's only 75. It's funny when when I was 28, 75 was ancient, but now that I'm 69, I mean, it's not that far away. But no, I've heard he's not doing that well, and he's got some issues with dementia. It's just really, really, really a shame.
You're really 69? I didn't think you were a day past 68 and a half. You look pretty good.
I'm aging well. I tell people I'm like a sequoia now. You got to cut me open and count the rings. Or like, what do they call that? Carbon dating in the lab. Oh, Mike's going to cut us off. So many thanks to our great friends in the live chat, as well as the millions
and millions
of
followers around the world.